So one of the most common questions that I get asked as an electrician is how much does it cost to replace my fuse box? And I get it. I mean, if your fuse board looks a bit old or outdated, or maybe you've been told during an inspection that it needs upgrading, it can be a bit of a worry. So what I want to do in this video is I want to walk through with you exactly what goes into the cost and why prices can vary, and overall what you should expect to pay if you're thinking about upgrading your fuse board in 2025 and beyond. Now, first of all, let's be clear, a fuse box, or a consumer unit as we call it these days, is basically the heart of your home's electrical system, okay? It's what protects you, it protects your family and your property from electrical faults and fires. So when you upgrade it, you're not just ticking a box or spending money for the sake of it, okay? You're investing in the safety of your home and your family. Now let's get onto the cost, because this is where most people often get confused, because if you search on the internet, anywhere online, you'll see numbers thrown around anywhere from £100 on the lower end all the way up to £5,000 on the higher end, okay? And the truth is, it really does depend on the type of home that you live in and the current condition of your property's wiring. So let me give you some real numbers to give you an idea of what you can realistically expect to be paying if you do go ahead and get your consumer unit upgraded in your property. As of me filming this, the unit itself, a decent unit, a quality consumer unit from a good brand, is usually anywhere between £150 to £200 just for the base hardware, depending on how many circuits your home needs. Okay, so that includes the metal casing, which is obviously the unit itself, the main switch, and then in most cases a surge protection device. Now on top of this, you then have to buy individual breakers, which are called RCBOs, for each circuit that your home has. And these are somewhere in the region of around £15 to £25 per breaker. So if you have a look at your current consumer unit, you can count how many breakers you currently have. And providing that you don't need or want anything else added to your consumer unit, this will give you a rough idea of how much you will need to spend on the new RCBOs or circuit breakers. Now, having said all of that, I don't want to bore you, especially if you're not an electrician, without getting into the boring and technical details, there is a slightly cheaper way of installing a new board, but it involves using a different type of breaker, which are MCBs, and they are RCD protected. And they're an older technology now, okay? It's not something that I personally ever do or will install or recommend to my customers, because the way that I see it is if you are going to invest your hard-earned money into having a new consumer unit installed, do it properly, okay? And use the latest devices and technology that offer the greatest protection and future-proofing of your home, okay? So don't skimp out. It's really not worth it. If you're going to go ahead and do it, have RCBOs installed. Now, all the boring stuff out of the way, moving on. The next cost on the list is the labor and the testing, and this is and always will be by far the biggest expense. Replacing the box isn't just simply swapping a plastic case for a metal one, okay, and throwing a few circuit breakers in. Before we can do anything as electricians, we first have to conduct an initial test, which is called an EICR, which stands for an electrical installation condition report, on your current wiring, to make sure that everything is safe and working as it should be before we can install the new consumer unit. And the results from these tests can and will be a mixed bag, especially if your current wiring is very old. So let's say pre-90s, 90s or pre-90s, or if you or the previous owners or builders have interfered with circuits and added cables all over the place that shouldn't be there. That obviously causes a lot of problems that will need to be rectified before any new consumer unit can be installed correctly and safely. In fact, only last week I was working on a property in London and Essex where the owners were having a kitchen extension added. So they wanted me to add a few new circuits, change a few things around, new lights, and conduct an EICR to give them an overview of the current wiring condition, as they've only moved into the home a couple of months ago. And the readings were all over the place, okay? The cables were broken, they were incomplete, it was a mess, it was a shambles. So based upon the readings that I was getting and the report, I told the homeowner to wait until the following day, because I knew that the builder that very evening, who was handling the kitchen extension, he was going to be taking down the ceilings, and then this would give me a chance to be able to see and access some of the cables to try and better understand exactly what was going on in the ceiling or below the floorboards on the first floor. And this is what I walked into the following morning. Okay, I'll pop a video up on the screen now. Needless to say, it was some of the worst examples of botched and bad wiring that I have ever personally seen. Okay, just years upon years of dodgy DIY. There was exposed live cables left in the ceiling. There was no earthing present. Point blank, it was dangerous. Okay, so long story short, I told the customer that the best thing to do was to rip everything out of the house and start all over again from scratch. And luckily they chose to do that. And this story is just a highlight to show you why before every single board change, you must conduct an EICR report in order to make sure that the cables that are buried in the walls, that are hidden in the ceilings, that are underneath floorboards, that are in the loft, you need to make sure that they are still safe to use and have been installed correctly. Otherwise, you'd be essentially replacing an old consumer unit for a shiny new one with the old and gnarled cables hidden behind the scenes, okay? It would be like placing a crown on or a cap over a decaying rotten tooth, okay? It'd be nonsensical. It's a really silly thing to do. Now, the cost of an EICR, without cutting corners like many do and performing it properly, will be somewhere between £200 to £400 on average. Now, of course, this price will vary from every home depending on how big the property is and how many circuits there are to test and whereabouts you are based in the country. But ballpark figure around the London and Essex area, where most of my work is, you're looking somewhere between £200 to £400 to have it done properly. And all being well, if the results from your EICR are satisfactory, the final cost that you will incur is the actual labour for replacing the old consumer unit for a new one, along with the testing on the new unit to make sure that everything is working as it should be, and then finally giving you an EIC, which is an electrical installation certificate, and that will give you the paperwork to back up that you've had your new board installed by a certified professional. The cost will be somewhere in the region of £300 to £600. Now, again, depending on the complexity of the board change and where you're located. If you're in London or you're close in the surrounding areas of London, it will be on the higher end of that scale. And then further out, whether you go a little bit more south or a little bit up north, it will be on the lower end. But you have to think of costs such as travel, parking, congestion charge, ULEZ charge, additional materials, and anything else involved. That will obviously drive the overall price up of your new board being installed. So in and around London right now, which is, like I said, where most of my work usually is, you should realistically expect to pay around £1,200 at the higher end of the scale and £800 towards the lower end of the scale. And this is based upon a small property with, let's say, 6 or 7 circuits, an initial EICR test, a standard fuse box replacement, and then fully tested and certified to finalise the change. If it's a bigger property with more circuits, or there's more complexity to the board access and the board change itself, or if issues are found that need to be corrected first during the EICR, obviously that cost is going to increase. And if anybody's offering to do it for you for a very low price, that's an instant red flag, okay? Corners will be cut. No doubt the person who is doing it won't really know what they're doing, or they're not fully qualified. Paperwork won't be issued, or it will be fraudulent. And long story short, you'll end up paying more in the long run when things inevitably go wrong. And you're putting yourself and your home and your family's safety at risk. To save a few quid, it's really not worth it. So to summarise, as we're filming this, you can expect to pay somewhere between £800 and £1,200 for most standard consumer unit replacements in London and the surrounding areas for a smaller property. And then with a bigger property or more complicated jobs, you're obviously going to increase that price and maybe pay a little bit more. Now, if you're not sure whether yours needs upgrading or you've been told by somebody that it does and you simply want a second opinion, I'm more than happy to help you. I work, like I said, mostly across London and Essex, all the surrounding areas. So if you'd like a free quote from me or you have any questions, you can simply hit the link that should be on your screen now, up here somewhere or down below in the video description, and you can get in touch with me and we can go from there. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching. Stay safe, and I'll see you again in the next one. Until next time, take care.